Section Finances. Marcy Jackson is going to do her absolute best to entertain us and inform us, and I'm looking forward to the Q&A afterwards because I'm sure it'll be fun. Marcy?
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Marcy Jackson. My title here at the Florida Bar is the Director of the Division of Administration and the Chief Financial Officer. And that includes all of the sections as well as what I keep hearing, the big bar. So I am your CFO. I am here today to help demystify the financial process, the reporting process, and in particular, the thing that seems to really confuse most people is how does the bar go about allocating out overhead? We don't do it in a consistent fashion for every different program, and so it leaves a lot of people confused about exactly how we want to do that. Now, I've already heard comments this morning about the financial statements and how confusing they are and how antiquated the bar's accounting system is. And one of the areas that I also have responsibility for is IT. So as you well know, we've been focused this last 12 months. I've only been with the bar about 14 months. We've been very focused the last 12 months in working on the website, but in the background, we developed a long-term IT plan that's going to incorporate modernizing and eventually replacing the current accounting system. Now, there's steps that we've taken in the interim to try and make things a little better until we get to that point. And those are things that Greg went over this morning with you. And there's still plenty of other things we can do along the way to make finances as palatable as we can make it. You know, it's one of those things that nobody ever likes to have to deal with, but it is the way we continue to exist. So I am all ears. I am here to hear what you have to say. You know, I'm still relatively new at the culture and the background of the bar. I do have a significant amount of experience in association management. I also spent about 13 years working for the state government, the last 9 of which were the CFO for the Florida Lottery. So I have seen it, I have been there, and I have revised it. Booter can tell you I did a lot of revising at the lottery while I was there, so I am all about change. I believe things have to constantly change, grow, and reflect the current market that we're living in. So there's no uncharted territory for me. So please, and I know you won't because you already have, do not be shy with sharing with me your thoughts and ideas. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time this morning starting on the basics of financial, 101 or budget 101. You all have home budgets. You all have firm budgets. You know how to start a budget. You have to figure out how much money you're going to make and how you're going to spend it, right? You have to have a strategic plan. You have to have some sort of plan. So I'm not going to start there. I'm going to start with what seems to be the confusion and the misunderstanding about what I call the microbial details of the budgets and the different kinds of budgets that we all seem to have to deal with here on a continuous basis. So the question is, how does the bar charge out overhead? The magical question of the hour. Well, we do it 2 different ways. Let's start with what I consider to be the most detailed way that we do it, is how do we do it for CLE programs? For CLE programs, because they are profit-driven, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in the end, we actually charge the CLE program, we track each program, we charge them for administrative time. Your program administrator, the person who helps pull together the speakers, the structure, gathers the information, they track their time by program, and we charge it to that CLE program. We also charge for the management time that it takes to supervise those program administrators. We charge for what I call internal services, and we'll talk a little bit more about what those internal services are. But they're things like artwork, graphics department, print shop, mail room, those type of things. Actual services that have a billable rate. And then what seems to be at the end, we come back and charge a general overhead charge. Now, it's not really at the end. But when we talk about how that's done, you'll understand why it appears to be at the end. It's kind of all cost-driven. Your costs come at the end. So the allocation then gets built in there. And so it feels like it's at the end, but it really is kind of an accumulation that gets booked at the end. And all of this is done through a very complex combination of various systems that include timekeeping and job tracking that are all linked to these particular CLE programs. The problem is, it's not timely. It's all while it's complex and interrelated, it's still very manual. So we keep time in one system, and then we go get the reports, and then we book a journal entry, and then we allocate based on the journal entry. So some of the questions that I've heard over and over and over again is, why does it take 60 days to figure out whether or not we made a profit on our CLE? Because so many of these allocations are time-driven or cost-based, and that all seems to happen right at the end, when it all comes together and we've seen the cost and we allocate that percentage. Is that the best way to do it? No. Is it the current system and the one that you're going to have to use for this upcoming budget cycle? Yes. Am I trying to give you some tools to use to help you through that? Yes. So we're going to talk a little bit more, and I'm going to go over some of those tools I've developed for you. The reptile section anxiously volunteered to be my guinea pig on developing some of this documentation. So they're trying to help me make sure that it's exactly what you want. But we'll talk about that in a little bit. Now, I did the old-fashioned thing because every time I'm at one of these presentations and I have these detailed little reports, I can't read them from where I'm sitting, so I printed them out for you. So that was what I handed out. Some of them are highlighted, just like this one is, and unfortunately the copy machine didn't pick up the highlights on some of the other ones. So if your copy's not highlighted, you can see which lines, I hope, to highlight, and if not, we'll go over them together and I'll point it out. Again, like I said, CLE programs are the end result is that the profits or losses are shared, 20%, 80%. So the bar, and I guess in combination with the sections, felt it very important to make sure that we get to the true bottom line. What is the real profit? Well, in order to calculate real profit, you have to apply overhead to that. And it can't be some general number. So we have a very detailed allocation that gets thrown in here into every CLE program, so we really see what the true profit is. And I'm going to point them out for you in this report. I just kind of want to generally go over this report to start with. The revenues are those 3,000 numbers that you see up at the top. And then we start, and you'll see that line that says total revenue, and then we start with all the expenses. And the first two, which are highlighted here, are literally the program administrator's time and their supervisor's time that they spent on this particular program. And this is program number C1632, which happened to be the 2013 practice something. Somebody'd have to help me figure out what DOAH stands for.
Practice before DOLA.
Thank you.
Division of Administrative Hearings.
I know what the Division of Administrative Hearings is. So this is apparently a CLE course that was pulled together for that particular topic. And so every CLE course gets its name and it gets tracked by this number. And as the program administrators work on pulling the content together for that meeting, they track their time. And this is the per hour charge for the program administrator. And again, for Dixie and Terry's time to supervise them and review and monitor their activities. Now, if you go down to another line that I have highlighted there, it's that 86,000 number that says administrative expense. That is a percentage of cost that gets applied that covers all of the other general administrative activities that are required to help this CLE program be conducted. That includes the accounting department. That includes the HR department. That includes me. That includes the mail room. So there are a lot of administrative activities, the IT department, just to keep the systems up and running that you use to gather the information and pull it all together. CLE programs are the only place you really ever see that particular line. Now, the departments get it, but you as a section don't see it, okay? Now, the reason I wanted to highlight that is because in a minute when we go look at your section reports, you're not going to see that. That line is part of the per member rate that sections contribute to the bar for administrative expense. So like I said, from a section perspective, the only time you're going to see that administrative expense is when you look at one of these CLE reports where we're trying to actually calculate an exact profit or loss because we're going to split it. Okay? And then typically, and I say typically, not always, typically, when you look at these, right after the event happens, they're in a loss status. And then as they start selling post-market, and Terry's going to cover this in much more detail in their CLE panel, so I don't want to steal his thunder, you'll start seeing them go from that loss status back to a profitable status. Again, this program continues. We continue to track the cost in the post-market, and every time we make a DVD, a charge goes in here for reproducing that DVD. So the administrative charges continue to grow just like the revenue continues to grow because there's a small charge that gets applied. That's what I call an internal service every time we make a DVD and ship it out out to a member. Okay? Now, the other way we apply overhead, and this is for everything else your section does, this is your general section activity, is that we charge you for those internal services. So if, as a section, you use the bar's conference calling system, we charge you for that. If you use the bar's print shop to print a handout for meetings or table tents or name badges, we charge you for the print shop. What else have I got up there? Artwork. Most of the time, all the logos that are designed or the brochures that are put together to help you market your events, all of that's kind of created in our graphics department, and there's a per hour rate that we use to apply those charges. But that's a service. If you stop and think about, those are things that if you were at your own firm, you'd go out and pay Kinko's or some printing company or when you took it to the post office, that type of thing. Those are services. That's not administrative overhead. The way the bar recovers its general administrative overhead from sections as a whole is in compliance with that standing board policy 5.63, which defines and describes that whole $17.50 per member that the bar retains from the section dues that you charge your voluntary members. So there's this year-end, and that particular standing board policy, which if you've never seen it, you're going to, because I have part of this tool I put together was a copy of all the standing board policies that relate to the sections, describes that this $17.50 has to be checked for reasonableness at the end of every year. Because if you spent more than $17.50 per person, the bar is going to cover you for a certain amount of that. And if you were really crazy and went above that, you may owe us some money. More likely, you didn't spend $17.50 per member, and we're going to give you a refund. So we go through this year-end analysis that decides whether or not that $17.50 is an appropriate number for your particular section, and we adjust accordingly. Again, a one-time year-end analysis that many times by the time we've closed the books, you guys have lost sight of the fact that you might have gotten an adjustment to that number. But I felt it was important that you realize that we do analyze it and make sure that it's appropriate based on your level of resource utilization. Now, the current process and the way the $17.50 is analyzed is very much driven by cost and what your prorated basis of cost is compared to all the cost of all the sections. And there is massive debate about whether or not that's the appropriate basis, and I'm pretty sure everybody around this table would agree that it's not the best. It is an easily measurable basis, but it's probably not very representative of the level of resources and effort required to manage your sections. And I throw that comment in there because this recommendation that I want to make in December, I really want to be more focused on measuring the level of efforts that are required than the dollars spent. Okay? All right, so the other report that I gave you was an example of a standard, what I call statement of operations, that we prepare every month for your section. Some sections have more than one of these. Some sections don't. It depends on, this is one of those things that's unique to each section. It depends on how you have decided you want to try and manage your trust funds monies. Do you want it all in one big pot, or do you want to subdivide it like the reptiles do? The reptiles have about 5 of these. Because that's the way they decided to divide theirs up. And I can really only answer to theirs because that's who I've spent the most amount of time on, studying and trying to demystify. Well, I mean, like I said, they volunteered. They were my guinea pigs, so that's where I started. But I'm getting to all of you, so don't worry. Again, so they have 5 of these, and then we take them and we roll it up for them. There's a roll-up report, so they can see what the bottom line really is for everything all combined. But if you look here, again, the one yellow highlighted line, that's where the equivalent of that administrative charge is. You're never going to see general overhead charged in your individual section reports. Now, the ones that I have starred for you, those are what I call internal services. Those are where you see money going back and forth between the section and the bar to cover those internal services. But those are not general overhead. That general overhead line is up there in that contra revenue. You're going to learn an accounting term today. Contra revenue account called administrative fees to the Florida Bar. And that's that $17.50 per member. Okay? Again, to demystify it, you have to understand why we do it that way. The CLE revenue is shared between the two entities as a percentage of profit. We have to be able to accurately calculate the profit. So everything is charged to the CLE. For the section's service programs and anything else section related, it's handled down inside your section budget, and therefore the overhead's applied in that $17.50 per member charge. Do you see the difference between those two and why there might be a difference in the way that we account for the overhead? Okay, I wanted to take a few minutes to kind of describe the bar's administrative expenses, because there is a misnomer out there that all of the bar's administrative expenses get allocated out to all the programs. They do not. Only 54% of the bar's total administrative cost get allocated out to programs, of which sections are considered a program. The other 46% are not, and they're absorbed out of the $265 that bar members pay. Now, I'm going to have to walk out here, so I can't see all the little writing there. The Executive Director's Office, the Board and Officers expense, the General Counsel, the process we have for strategic planning, membership services and records, and undistributed IT development. There's a difference between development and operations. Development time never gets allocated out. We charge developer time when they develop applications specific for your section. So you wouldn't see a charge for IT development time unless your program asks us to do something very specific and write a program for you. I'm trying to get away from writing programs, but you know what I mean. The allocated portion, again, going back to that list that I was citing earlier, that's the CFO's office, that's the accounting, budget, HR training. We do have an IT training department here. IT operations, we have a fairly significant budget for keeping our website and our infrastructure network up and running. We have a lot of different applications that we run to meet the needs of various different programs. So we've got a lot of software licenses that have to be paid for and maintained. And then let me explain what unallocated office systems, arts, graphic, mailroom, print shop, those kind of internals. If we get to the end of the year and we see that our mailroom didn't get charged out completely over the course of the year, and it's a significant dollar amount left, we may decide to go back and reallocate and change the rate that we charge for the mail services. That's one of those things that I'm trying to stop. I'm trying to force us to be more accurate in our estimating and including it in that standard cost so there isn't anything unallocated left to go back. I'm trying to take away all of that year-end surprise of, oh, we didn't pay enough and now we owe more. I've done that in several places. I've got just a couple of more to get to. Okay? Again, we just talked about all of this. Now, who all gets that 54%? And how do we figure that out? Well, one of our biggest programs is the regulation of law. So they get 38%. This was based on not this current year's numbers, but the year before, because I haven't gotten to this year's numbers yet. They get 38% of that 54%. And so on down the line here, UPL, YLD, the sections, meetings and planning, CLE, client services fund, the certification. I give Donna a chunk. She gets a slice. Journal and news, other publications, section management, public information programs, legislation, just about every other program we have. Leadership Academy, Vision, they all get a slice of the overhead pie. So you're not bearing the brunt of all of it. It gets divided up amongst a lot of people. And again, I kind of already went over what is excluded from that overhead charge, just so you know, what I call the governance part of the organization does not get included in that. And of course, membership services, because without our membership information, none of us can really do anything. So it's central to everything that we do. We also don't allocate the Tampa meeting office space because we charge for that. That's a service charge. Now, I know I didn't cover everything you want to know. We'll go back. I'll take questions. But please know I am here, right there. I actually have two email addresses, a C Jackson or a M Jackson, whichever name you remember. And there's my phone number. And as many of you have already discovered, I walk around with my email attached to me just about all the time. Please email me your thoughts, your questions. Again, when you ask me questions, I go do research, I figure out, and I come back. I may not make a promise, but at least you've given me an opportunity to learn a little bit more about how this organization's working and how we want to move forward and revise. Like I said, my overall philosophy is everything changes. We are leaves on a tree. So I am about continuous change. I'm not scared of the C word. I use it quite frequently. Dixie and I work very closely together on, I make sure she gets what she needs as far as information that the sections need. I did want to take just a second before I go into questions and describe for you a document that I pulled together, like I said, working with the reptile section. And this is why you didn't get a copy of it, because it's 140 something pages long. But it's got quite a few different pieces of information in it. Several of these, I think 4 or 5 of these, are very specific to the reptile section. And when we get to the point where we're making this for each section, they will be unique to your section. There's other pieces of it right now that if you wanted, we could give to you. We have it in electronic version. If you'll request it from your program administrator, I'll make sure they get it to you. But things like all of the standing board policies that are relevant to the finance and budgeting of your section. I've heard from several people they've never seen them, so we have them. I also put in here a copy of the annual budgeting instructions that are provided to the staff, so you'll know what we tell them and that they are to use in turn when they help you prepare your budgets. I did and this was the other handout that I gave you, because when I did this for the CLE committee, the sections thought it was great, and so I went back and did it specifically for the reptile section, and we're already working on doing it for several of the other sections, but it's that last piece of the handout, the one that was, I think it's front and back 2 pages. And it is an account glossary. Now, these are all the accounts that are used for a CLE program. The vast majority of them are used in your sections as well, so the definition will be the same. But you have a few more that are, like, again, unique to each section, so we're trying to modify that document so that it will be relevant to your particular section. But it was like, oh, wow, that's what that is used for? So it's very helpful if you're the one who's trying to figure out and read these lines on these financial statements. Well, what all goes in there? Here's a glossary for you to use to help you figure that out. The standard costs that we apply for those internal services are in here. They're all a standard cost rate, so that when you're budgeting, if you think you're going to have to use, and trust me, you're going to have to use the art department. You know it. You can go ahead and figure out what that charge might be. So I thought that was very useful information. I kind of did a little primer on how you might start trying to work on a budget for a CLE program. So that's in here. And then again, the formula that we use, which is no different than any business uses for how we calculate the profit on a CLE. What all is considered in that calculation. So I just kind of wrote it out for you. Again, if you think back to your Finance 101, you're going to find out it's exactly the same as any business would use to calculate profit. So again, my goal here is to try and demystify all of this scary financial stuff, realizing that this is no different than running your own checkbook at home and trying to accumulate wealth and monitoring your trust funds so that you aren't surprised when you get to the end of the year and, oh my, what happened? As we've mentioned, I'm working on the timeliness of information getting to you. Some of that we can do now. Some of it's going to come a little bit later when we address the entire accounting system, but we're doing what we can. Mr. Harkness has been very generous in making sure we get the resources that we need in order to provide you with the information that you need. So with that, I'll take questions. Yes, sir. Greg.
Thank you, Marcy. I mean, that's tremendously helpful. Two quick things. Could you just talk very briefly about the timeline for the new accounting program, and also just a little bit of information in terms of what you're looking to accomplish towards the end of this year on the potential revision of the allocation methodology, if you will?
Thank you, because yes, I meant to do that. Again, my goals, and I'm going to start with the allocation first. My goals and objectives for revising the allocation process are going to be to come up with a way that you can all easily calculate yourself what the administrative charge will be for any particular event. So it has to be timely applied. It has to be a comprehensive rate that includes everything. We're going to stop all of this line by line by line by line by line charges. We want to come up with one easy way that is resourced, utilization based, but that is easy to apply. I've got ideas in my head. I got to put numbers on them. I've got to talk about it with Terry and a couple of other people before I go out here and tell you what it's going to be. But you'll understand my goal here again is to, because I don't think, and I think you would all agree, I don't think it's fair that a section or a CLE or any other program who uses less resources should have to pay the same overhead rate as someone who uses a whole lot more. I think those that are heavy users of the resources need to carry a little bit higher burden of the cost than the ones who don't. And there are some sections that don't do any newsletters. They don't have a website. They have 1 or 2 meetings a year. They don't, they just don't do, and it could be because they're young. Their time may be coming. And then there's those that have multiple meetings, multiple service level projects, and they're paying the same overhead rate. So that's where I'm going. I want it to be easily calculatable. You would all be able to figure out what it is, incorporate it into whether it be a CLE event or your section budget, that can be timely applied and will be a comprehensive, all-inclusive amount. And no, my middle name is not Miracle. Yes, ma'am. Oh, I forgot the timeline. Let me go back to the timeline real quick, and then we'll get to you. Like I said, when I came to the bar, I realized that we really didn't have a long-term IT strategic plan that outlined when systems were going to be modified or modernized, as I'm calling it, sometimes revamped, sometimes replaced. So I had to devise that to start with, and I had to be realistic given the resources that we have in the IT department. And again, like I said, Greg and Mr. Pettis and Mr. Harkness have all been very supportive about if you need resources to do this, so we're using some staff augmentation and we outsource some things. So I'm using a wide variety of resources to try and get all of this accomplished. The website was the first thing. We stood up an entirely new platform, and Mr. Harkness gets mad at me when I talk too technical. So just suffice it to say it is a completely 180-degree turn in platform from what we had before. Very portal-based, easy to modify, easy to make responsive in the mobile world. Next, we're going to the membership system, because like I said, membership is key to all of us. The current membership system is still on a green screen. So we got to get that into the modern age, make it so we can all use it the way we want to use it. And then comes the accounting system. And unfortunately, as much as the accounting system is near and dear to my heart, it does have to come last because I've got to get the interfacing parts built through the shopping cart on the new website, and then dump it into a new accounting system. But the new accounting system, I really am going to push the accounting department in picking a product that is completely integrated, meaning it's going to have a purchasing module, it's going to have a timekeeping module, it's going to have a payroll module, it's going to have a cash management module, an accounts receivable module. They're all going to link into one system, whereas right now we don't have any of that. So again, just as an easy example of what I want to achieve with the new accounting system is that the system will have a purchasing module in it. So when when a CLE program is established, a contract is written with a hotel, a purchase order is set up, and we start estimating based on the number of people we have registered to come to it and how many meeting rooms we know we're going to use, how much that hotel bill is going to be. So that when we get it 60 days after the event, we already know what it was going to look like with some minor tweaking along the way. So it won't be that 60-day, oh my. We will have known it before we got there, what it was going to cost. We can make the purchase order effective a certain day, and guess what? Whether I've got the hotel bill or not, I've got a really close approximation of what my profit was on that event. And that's what I want to do. And that's what you need. So I'm looking at probably a go-live date on an accounting system of the beginning of the fiscal year 2016. So, July 1, 2016. We have to find one. We have to get it purchased. We have to get it implemented. We have to do a nasty, nasty, nasty data conversion and then run parallel and get it up and running. I can't reiterate how nasty the data conversion is going to be. Okay. Just so you know. All right. Yes, ma'am.
Emily Graham from the Entertainment, Arts, and Sports Law section. I was just wondering how much lead time you need if we're planning live or internet CLEs to work on the budgeting of that.
Again, the budgeting is actually done by the program administrators in conjunction with the section leadership. So I don't need, they tell me when it's time. So really that close work goes back with the program administrator. Yes, sir.
I've been holding my questions since the first slide. And I've seen these before, and I've gotten various explanations on the DOA seminar report. There were negative numbers in the monthly column. And is that from, I've been told sometimes we get rebates back. Is that a rebate, or what are those negative numbers on the monthly column?
It depends on which monthly number you're looking at. It could be negative because it was a rebate. It could have been in the income line. Sometimes the numbers are because you're paying out a percentage to something else. So I'd have to look at it specifically, and if you want to do that, we can. For instance, the very first line was the $25 section differential. Let's pull that one back up. Your CLE report, the example CLE report that I gave you. The very first line, 31,436, course section differential. Now you realize part of this funds go back to your section. If you have a course that you have both section member and non-section members attending, the sections get a percentage of that. So that's why you see income and outgo. And that's an outgo. Okay? So this is just, again, keep in mind monthly numbers are literally monthly numbers. Where you really want to spend your time and energy focusing on is on your year to date.
Are some of those mistakes?
They could be reclassifications. It could be where we're moving something. Somebody's looked at the detailed transactions and the following month they say, oh, Marcy, this was in the wrong place. We had that happen just this week as part of the year-end closing process. We're working very closely with people to look at the details and tell me if something doesn't look right. And they came up and they said, oh, this was here and it should have been there. And so, yes, the following month we will take it out and move it and put it back in. So you're going to see a negative in one line and a positive in a number in the month, but the year to date didn't change. So that does happen too.
In your pie chart, you had a slice for section allocation overhead to excuse me. In your pie chart, you had a slice for allocation of overhead to the section, and then another slice for something called section management.
Correct.
And what's the difference between the two?
Terry and Dixie are section management. The program administrators are the sections. And so it's why we have them split like that, I cannot answer you. Again, my goal with the new accounting system is that all these pools won't be needed anymore. This is the way this particular system was set up.
Can you go back?
I'm going to try. Bear with me here. There it is. You're right.
So it's 8.5 to the section and 4.9
To section management. Again, that's still only, 13.4% of 54%? Okay, what else? Yes, sir. You shouldn't have any questions.
First, thank you very much for the transparency, the changes. It's, your coming on board has made a big difference. And just so that everyone else knows, been very responsive, come down to our meetings. And this, the glossary is, it's very helpful. It helps us get to the decoder ring, if you would. Following up on Greg's question on the timeline, you spoke about the software issues. What about when we'll be getting the reports so that we can start to use them for the new budgeting cycles and as our programs are unrolling now? Both the reports on the programs themselves, but also the flow through of the invoicing of these bar charges so that we know now rather than later.
Well, unfortunately, that is a very manual process that happens at the end of the year, and Beth is over there working as fast and furiously as she can. I know Terry was giving her some heat yesterday about hurry, hurry, hurry. This year, with annual convention being so late in the year, we're a little bit behind schedule and trying to get all the bills in. We were hoping to have preliminary reports ready today. I don't think it's going to happen today. I'm thinking it'll be Monday or Tuesday. But we're really trying to shorten the timeline. We used to commit to having the monthly reports out by the 15th. We backed that up to the 10th. If the 10th falls on a weekend, I'm going to tell you it's going to be Monday before you get it. But we're trying to shorten that timeline, but seriously, until we get a new accounting system, I'm not going to be able to get it much shorter than that 10-day period of time. But for your year-end ones, we're trying to get those out in the next few days.
Will the monthly reports have the bar charges on them?
They have the bar some of these bar charges, the internal service bar charges are done every month. So those are in there. And for your section purposes, that's what you're looking at. The only thing you won't know right now is your $17.50 per member, whether or not that was adequate or inadequate or, you know.
And will that show, or will that have, or will we have available the backup so that
Yes, sir.
we can see and double check to make certain, just the way our clients do with our bills?
Yes, you will. One of the documents that we have now put out there on the central database that all the program administrators can get to are the detailed transactions that support the monthly reports. If your program administrator hasn't been sending you those, I know the reptiles are getting theirs because I've been doing it myself. I will work with them individually and show them where that information is and how to get it to you. So just let again, communicate with your program administrator about what you want, and we'll make sure they have it.
And one last on a separate but still an IT issue. The bar website seems to be going down at 3 o'clock on a daily basis, and been told that's because it's for maintenance. There's some folks that work late, and that's when we get a lot of work.
He's referring to 3 a.m.
Oh, 3 a.m.
Yes.
Oh, well, now we do have to do maintenance sometime.
But this is almost on a daily basis, and is that going to be changed, and if so, when?
We actually have IBM in here right now, and they've been here for the last week working on improving the performance. So hopefully we won't be doing maintenance every day. But there will still always be a time when we have to do maintenance. I can't promise you 24/7 responsiveness all the time.
Terry had something you wanted to add.
Marcy, if you don't mind, I just had a couple of points that I wanted to add to that. I had at least three section leaders look at me when you talked about the course section differentials, saying that they get a portion of that. And I just wanted to clarify, because of those three people who looked at me, that it's 100% of that. The course section differential, if you have a $60 section fee or a $40 section fee, that negative on the CLE financial statement, it has a corresponding credit on the section financial statement, because you get 100% of that revenue. The other thing that Marcy was talking about, and I think Mike might have been asking about with regard to the modified monthly financial statements, Marcy actually has requested, and Mr. Harkness has approved, having a dedicated person in the finance and accounting department who will be charged with creating those monthly statements for CLE and for the section, with that footnoting on it, so that it will, in addition to getting what we will call the non-aesthetically appealing financial statement, there will be a separate financial statement with footnoting on it that the sections will begin to get from the finance and accounting department through the administrators.
That's probably going to take me about another 60 days or so to get in place. We've got to get somebody hired.
And the footnoted version is the aesthetically pleasing version?
It'll be a little better. A little better. Anything else?
More of a request than a question. When the bar does update the accounting software, I would really find it helpful for the people who follow me. I just finished my term as Secretary Treasurer, and trust me, I would love to have seen this last year at this time. And the glossary is very helpful now that I don't need it anymore. But when we generate the new accounting software, it would be great at that time to generate a handbook or a glossary or something to explain to the incoming people who may have never seen this before what each of these charges are. I learned it by bugging Angie a lot, but there should be a simpler way for new people to become familiar with this process, to work in their section budgeting a lot more efficiently and take less bar time doing it. So I would suggest that would be very useful to the sections and divisions.
Well, that was kind of my goal with starting with this development of this particular document for the reptiles, was that I hope to have one, and then we'll keep them current. That's also a part of the trick, is keeping things current. We'll keep them current, and we'll modify them as the new system changes things. But I tried to write these from more of a process than a procedure perspective, so that they can stay current better.
And briefly, one other thing too, on the specific line item details, the financial statements that you get are the same ones that the administrators get. They should be providing you access to every month on a monthly basis, whether you're requesting them or not. But the other piece of that is if you look at the graphics and art line item, or meeting contracts line item, or coffee line item, whatever your line items are, and it looks, you want to know how you spent $9,000 on coffee in July. The administrators don't automatically get the backup for that, but they can, with a hit of a button or a phone call, get get that back up and provide it to you line by line as to what each of those line items that it comes, because we do get that. Sections will say, how did we spend X thousands of dollars or X hundreds of dollars on conference calls or on something else, and then and they don't think it's possible until we go back and get the backup, and they go back and look through the 60 committees were using the conference call system for that month or something like that. So the detail is available, and all the administrators have to do is request it for that specific line item.
Okay, well, Marcy, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.